2 minutes. Pack it up or I'll have you dragged out. Don't test me, you're done here.
Security radios hiss. A front desk manager jabs a finger across the counter. You need to leave now. Phones rise, recording. The black CEO doesn't blink. She sets a leather case on the marble, clicks the lock, reveals a board resolution with a raised seal. 2 minutes, he warns. She checks the time, taps call, proceed. Doors breathe open behind him. An email lands. Change of control, effective immediately. She steps back in, calm as a metronome. We'll do this by the book. The room freezes. The cameras keep rolling. The lobby hums with a low mechanical breath from the vents, printers ticking behind the counters, a string of soft chimes from the entrance sensor. It is just noisy enough that people raise their voices to be heard. Phones ascend across the room as if pulled by the same wire. A front desk manager in a navy suit leans across the counter and points as if to press the air right between the eyes of the woman opposite him. You need to leave now. His voice cuts through the lobby like a receipt tearing. The black CEO does not step back. She studies the space that separates his finger from her face and allows a single heartbeat to pass before she answers. On whose authority? She places a leather case on the dark stone. The latch clicks like a metronome striking a tempo. Inside lies a stack of papers edged with colored tabs and a top sheet bearing a raised seal that catches a smear of lobby light. She flips to a marked page and glides it forward. Clause 7. Resolution of the board. Effective upon notice. Her diction is quiet, but the words seem to land with weight. The manager glances at the page without committing to read it. 2 minutes, he says, eyes already shifting to the security officer by the door. 2 minutes, and we will escort you out. A security radio hisses. The officer does not rush in. He maintains a respectful distance, posture squared, gaze moving from the manager to the woman and back. The customers at the far kiosk drift closer, phones tilted, half hidden by a pillar. The CEO checks the time on her screen and makes a brief call. Proceed. She ends the call and sets the phone face down beside the resolution. Her movements are neat and slow, the kind that suggests she has rehearsed this moment and will not waste syllables or gestures. The manager repeats the order to leave. He raises his voice, not to shout, but to ensure the room hears it. The audience matters to him. A young woman near the rope divider breathes a surprised laugh and then quiets. The officer clears his throat softly, as if to remind them he is present. The printer ticks again and falls silent. Somewhere deeper in the building, a door opens and closes with a padded thud. The CEO slides a second document forward. It is a letter from counsel with a timestamp and delivery log. Notice was served 9 minutes ago. She keeps her tone flat. Since then, every instruction you issue that contradicts this resolution creates exposure. She does not say for whom. She does not have to. Her eyes hold the manager long enough that he chooses to glance at the camera over her shoulder instead. He tries a different line. We do not recognize your authority here. She answers by tapping the seal with a fingertip. Recognition is not required for effect. A faint chime comes from the front doors. They part. 2 administrators from upstairs cross the threshold with a practiced office walk that suggests they live in calendars and deadlines. One carries a laptop open to an email labeled Change of Control. The subject line is crisp. The timestamp matches the one on the letter. The officer's radio breaks the quiet with a short burst. He steps aside to receive a message, listens, nods once, and returns without saying a word. The manager notices the administrators and straightens, then tries to wave them off. He tells them he has the situation in hand. They keep coming. The CEO reaches into the case and produces a key card in a clear sleeve. The plastic has a new shine, edges sharp from the print run. She holds it level in her palm so the camera phones can frame it. She does not raise her voice. She asks the manager to read the names on the signature page. He picks up the paper at last and scans. His mouth tightens at the third name, the board chair. He flips to the next page and sees counsel's countersignature. He puts the paper down with care, as if it might slide away if he releases it too fast. Someone whispers that this is getting real. The officer shifts his weight, no longer preparing to escort but to witness. The CEO opens the banking app for internal operations. She requests a permissions change. The upstairs administrator confirms on her laptop and nods. Access control is transferring. A notification pings on the manager's terminal. He tries to ignore it. The second ping lands like a dropped coin. He cannot help himself. He looks. The screen states that his administrative session will expire in 30 seconds. He taps the keyboard just to feel the keys bite under his fingers. Nothing changes. The CEO takes a breath the way a swimmer does before pushing off the wall. She tells the room that operations will continue without interruption and that clients will be served as scheduled. She adds that all staff should check their email for a brief memo that clarifies reporting lines for the next 48 hours. Her voice neither hardens nor softens. It carries. The manager begins to object, but his screen goes dim and returns as a limited user view. The cursor blinks, small and neutral. He turns to the officer as if he might find help there. The officer gives a courteous nod and says he has received updated guidance to defer to the resolution while the matter is clarified with the board. The CEO gathers her papers, reseats them in the case, and clicks the latch shut. The sound is unremarkable and final. She moves the case aside, leaving the counter clear, and asks the nearest teller to continue assisting the client at window 3. The teller looks to the manager by habit and then to the email open on her monitor. She nods to the client and resumes with a steady tone. The lobby finds a new equilibrium, like a room after a power flicker, when the lights return and everyone exhales. The manager lowers his hand. He stares at the counter where the case sat moments before, then at the phone lenses aimed at him, and finally at the raised seal on the page he chose not to read. He starts to speak and stops. The CEO thanks the officer for his professionalism and asks that a simple incident report be filed to document the timeline. She requests that a copy be provided to both legal teams. Her eyes return to the manager. "We will do this by the book." The sentence sits between them, solid as the stone counter, and the room resumes its work around it. The lobby steadies, but the tension does not dissipate. It condenses into a thin line that runs from the counter to the back offices, where decisions are usually padded by carpet and calendar invites. The black CEO waits one measured breath and then asks for the operational status sheet for the morning. The nearest teller prints it and slides it over. She scans the columns, marks 3 items with a pen, and circles a time window that coincides with her earlier call. The marks are not dramatic, just coordinates that convert posture into action. The front desk manager watches each stroke of the pen as if it is removing something from him. He says the sheet is internal and cannot leave the counter. She agrees it will not. She rotates it so the cameras can see the timestamp and then leaves it where it is. She asks him to confirm the daily cash orders and the scheduled arrival of the armored car. He gives the facts because the facts do not feel like surrender. While he speaks, she listens, the way a conductor hears a section that is early by half a beat. She notes the discrepancy, says nothing yet. An administrator from upstairs approaches with a slim laptop and a printed memo that still smells faintly of toner. She addresses both of them, voice clear. The board acknowledges receipt of the incident report and instructs all personnel to comply with the resolution pending further meeting. The manager exhales through his nose like a man finished with a sprint. He asks for direct confirmation from the board chair. The administrator says the chair will join by video in 10 minutes. The timeline is a hook. The crowd in the lobby stays to see what is pulled up. The security officer steps closer, not to enforce, but to separate the work of the bank from the scene that brought phones out. He invites onlookers to keep the aisles clear. The murmur drops by a notch. The CEO thanks him and requests a quiet space to coordinate access transfers with IT. He offers the glass room adjacent to the counter, blinds half drawn. She declines to leave the floor. She wants changes to be visible, not whispered behind panes. She opens the operations portal on the terminal provided by the administrator. Multi-factor prompts appear. She confirms on her phone and sets a temporary control window for the next 2 days. Long enough to stabilize, short enough to signal restraint. The manager tries again to interject. He insists procedures require an in-person verification by the old admin. The administrator gently corrects him. Old admin is a category that no longer applies to him as of the timestamp on the memo. The sentence is not cruel. It is a door that shuts on felt pads and stays shut. The CEO requests a call with the head of it. The call connects to the speaker. She states the scope plainly. Retain all logs, preserve access history, change nothing except the handover described in the resolution. The IT head confirms and reads back the key items. She asks him to send the read back in writing within a minute. He agrees. The manager listens and fixes on the phrase, "to retain all logs." He glances at his own terminal, then straightens his wrists on the edge of the counter as if weight might force time to reverse. A small convoy arrives at the doors. 2 compliance officers with document tubes and a notary with a metal case. No flourish, only the sound of wheels over stone. The notary checks identification, records entries, and places a seal on an acknowledgement of receipt. The seal depresses with a firm press, leaving a clean ring. The CEO initialed next to the ring. The compliance officers collect copies and distribute the updated reporting chart to the tellers. Hands move, nods, pass down the line. Work resumes with the efficiency of a store after a brief outage. The manager asks to speak privately. She declines and invites him to speak where the record is communal. He chooses words with care. He says he acted to protect clients and order. She does not challenge the motive. She asks a simple question. When you ordered me out, had you read any part of the resolution already on your screen? He falters, then says he skimmed. She thanks him for the truth and directs the administrator to include that admission in the incident report. Her tone is neither victory nor rebuke. It is a ledger entry. A chime from the ceiling announces a scheduled meeting. The upper conference display flickers to life with a grid of board members joining from remote offices. The chair appears last, tie loosened, eyes steady. He greets the floor and states that control rests with the CEO as per the vote recorded earlier that morning. He instructs all staff to comply and thanks the manager for his service up to this point. The phrasing is exact. Up to this point ends the argument without a shout. The CEO acknowledges and moves to the next practical matter. She asks for a quick audit of client appointments that were delayed by the incident. She dictates a short script for frontline staff to apologize and reschedule with priority slots. The script is clean, 2 sentences, no qualifiers. A teller repeats it once and memorizes it. The rhythm of service recovers, small by small, like a train returning to timetable after a signal failure. She returns to the counter, closes the loop on the armored car discrepancy she marked earlier. The time window was off because a shift swap did not propagate to the schedule. She corrects it, alerts the vendor, and confirms the handoff with a code phrase they established months ago for days exactly like this one. The foresight lands without commentary. The manager hears the code phrase and understands that what feels sudden to him was prepared in layers he never saw. Phones are still up, but arms are tired. People lower them. Satisfied the story now has a spine. The officer leans near the door, relaxed, watching the ebb of bodies around the velvet ropes. The administrator files the last memo and turns to the manager with professional courtesy. She asks for his temporary badge and offers a receipt. He takes it out slowly, the plastic warm from his pocket. He places it on the counter and looks at the raised seal one more time. The seal smiles its small blind smile back. The CEO does not gloat. She turns to the room and repeats one line that will be the tone of the day. We work. Clients first. She thanks the staff for their focus and asks the officer to escort the notary to the back office to finalize a copy set for legal. The lobby exhales. The new order is not loud. It is a steady pulse that says the building knows who is running it. The building adjusts to a new tempo. Elevators open and close with a rhythm that no longer feels uncertain. The black CEO remains at the counter for a full minute on purpose, letting people see that decisions now originate here and radiate outward. Then she begins a slow walk of the floor. She stops at window 3, asks the teller if the rescheduling script worked for the client who waited, listens to the reply, thanks her by name, and moves on. At the self-service kiosk, she notes a line building and redirects a spare teller to assist. Small fixes first, visible ones, the kind that stack into confidence. An operations lead from upstairs joins her with a tablet. He brings a red list and a green list. The red list covers systems that require immediate confirmation of control. The green list covers everything running normally. She chooses to start with surveillance retention, keep all camera footage from the past 2 hours and the next 4. The lead logs it, repeats it back, and sends the request to facilities. Next is outgoing wire approvals. She asks for a sample of transactions in the queue and signs off on the ones already reviewed by 2 staffers. No grand gestures, only the work. Richard Allen lingers near the end of the counter where the light does not glare on the monitor. He has surrendered the badge, but not the habit of watching every movement on the floor. She approaches him without hurry and asks if he has any open client escalations that predate the incident. He nods and produces a handwritten list from his breast pocket. The paper is creased from long carrying. She redirects those cases to the service manager and asks Richard to sit with the clients to ensure continuity. It is not a trap. It is a practical use of knowledge he still holds. He understands and agrees. For a moment, something in his shoulders lets go. The IT head arrives in person, hair still damp from the morning commute, carrying a laptop and a hard case of cables and adapters. He sets up at an unused desk within sight of the lobby and opens a secure session. He reads back the handover items a second time in front of her and records a short log entry that includes the time and her initials. She asks for a status on access keys for the executive suite and the network closet. He answers that the physical keys will be swapped at noon and that the access control database has already moved to the new admin group. She requests a temporary audit view for the compliance officers. He grants it. Public relations joins by phone. The line is crisp. She keeps it to 60 seconds. Issue a holding statement that operations are uninterrupted, that the board has confirmed leadership, and that clients will experience no service degradation. No adjectives. No victory tone. The spokesperson repeats it and promises to ship a draft to legal within 5 minutes. She asks for the draft to include a direct number for affected clients. The spokesperson agrees. Officer Daniels receives a short update over the radio and approaches with quiet steps. He reports that a small crowd is forming outside with more phones than questions. The CEO asks him to keep the entry clear and to allow the media to film from the sidewalk provided they do not block the door. He nods and relays the instruction. She thanks him and adds one line. If anyone asks, say we have all documents on record and that our clients come first today. He says he can do that. The notary finishes the final copy set. The compliance officers collect and secure them. One remains on the floor to witness access changes, while the other escorts the notary to the back office for storage. The administrator from upstairs returns with a short list of department heads waiting for direction. The CEO schedules a brief stand-up in the lobby rather than a closed room. When they gather, she speaks without flourishes. We stabilize operations. We communicate cleanly. We close the day without backlog. She assigns each head one measurable outcome due by 2 o'clock and asks them to repeat their tasks back. They do. The stand-up is over in 3 minutes. She circles back to the armored car timing issue she corrected earlier and asks the branch operations team to run a dry check for the revised handoff. The driver calls in to confirm the shift mix-up on their end and thanks the bank for the early alert. It is a small win. The room feels it. A client near the rope divider lowers her phone and asks if she can complete a wire. The CEO smiles with her eyes and says, "Yes, right here." The teller guides the client forward. Richard returns with a client who had an unresolved complaint from last week. He explains the history without defensiveness, names the missed callbacks plainly, and asks permission to stay in the conversation as context. The CEO agrees and invites the client to a quiet corner of the lobby. She listens to the sequence, repeats it to confirm understanding, and offers a remedy that includes immediate action and a follow-up call at a specific hour. The client considers, accepts, and thanks them. When the client leaves, the CEO thanks Richard for the clarity and assigns the follow-up to the service manager with Richard present. It is not an absolution, it is integration. Upstairs, the board chair sends a concise note confirming an afternoon vote ratification for the record. The administrator prints it and posts a copy on the internal board near the break area where everyone goes for water. The signal is simple, no rumors, documentation, visible and dull in the best way. The printers resume their background tick. The lobby settles into the sound of normal work. Pens on forms, shoes on stone, occasional polite laughter that belongs to customers who have decided their business is safe. The black CEO stops at the threshold of the lobby and looks back. The counter where the confrontation began is now just a counter. The floor hum is the right kind of hum. She sends one more message to legal and IT, preserve everything from opening to 10 minutes after close. She adds a second message to human resources, asking that they prepare a neutral script for anyone who gets asked by friends or media about the morning. The instructions fit on half a page. By the time she pockets the phone, the half page is already in motion. Outside, daylight brightens across the glass. The doors open. A courier with new access cards steps in. The officer checks the manifest, signs, and waves the courier through. The CEO meets them halfway and takes the top card from the stack. It is hers. She does not lift it high. She simply slips it into the sleeve next to the case where the resolution rests. Then she returns to the counter where she began and asks the next client in line how the bank can help today. The hallway to the executive suite smells faintly of toner and coffee warming plates. The black CEO walks it at a measured pace, not as a tour, but as a claim. An administrator matches her stride with a tablet and a short list of rooms that still require key updates. Outside the boardroom, a facilities tech waits with a badge, printer, and a small thermal laminator that hums when it idles. He confirms identities, updates, credentials, and logs each change with the time down to the second. The record is the point. Visibility is the method. Inside the boardroom, blinds are half open, sending steady bands of light across a long glass table. She takes the head chair, not to signal rank, but because the screen inputs route from there. The IT head plugs in, mirrors a dashboard to the wall, and shows the access tree now anchored to her account. She asks for an audit view for compliance and a read-only view for the chair. Both are granted and recorded. She asks that the dashboard be pinned to a dedicated display near operations so that anyone can see the status without requesting a briefing. He nods and sets it. A soft knock. Legal steps in with a thin folder of orders and acknowledgments. They speak in the grammar of risk and sequence. She signs 2 documents, initials 3, and returns 1 unsigned because a clause requires staff notification before it can take effect. She does not press for speed at the cost of process. Legal notices this and adjusts the timetable by an hour. The tone in the room settles into work music, not victory music. Human Resources arrives with a draft note to all employees. It is short. It confirms leadership, outlines reporting lines for the next 48 hours, and instructs staff where to send questions. She removes 1 adjective and 1 flourish, leaves the bones, and sets a send time at the top of the hour. HR suggests staggered follow-ups to managers to catch night shift and remote staff. Approved. The administrator schedules them and tags the owners. A call from the regulator pings through the speaker. The voice is practiced, professional. The regulator requests assurance that client access remained uninterrupted and that control changes were logged. The CEO provides a crisp timeline, cites the incident report number, and invites the regulator to a live view of the dashboard for the next 30 minutes. The invitation is unusual and exactly right. The regulator accepts and thanks her for the transparent posture. She follows with an email that repeats the facts in the same order. The regulator replies with acknowledgement and a reference code. Richard Allen enters with permission, hands visible, expression contained. He stands near the doorway instead of taking a seat. She invites him to the table. He declines politely and explains that he came to return a binder of branch procedures that was signed out to him last quarter. He places it on the table with care. The administrator scans the barcode on the spine, confirms the return, and files it. Richard asks if there is a role for him, while the day's changes settle. She considers it. There are plenty. She assigns him to client continuity with the service manager and asks him to draft a 1-page summary of recurring pain points he has observed in the lobby during peak hours. He nods. The task is concrete. He can do concrete. Public Relations sends a draft holding statement to her screen. It is clean and free of spin. She adds 1 sentence that gives clients a direct line and office hours for live resolution of any disruption. The addition shifts the message from assertion to service. PR replies with a final version to be posted. She approves and asks for a short internal note to staff, reminding them not to speculate on social channels. Facts only. Point to the statement, route media to PR. HR pairs that with a quick set of examples of acceptable responses. The kind of thing a person can read on the elevator and use right away. The board chair joins by video for 5 minutes and reviews the morning steps. He thanks the teams and asks for a single sheet before close that lists the material actions taken, the controls verified, and any open items. He wants it free of adjectives and suitable for the record. She agrees and assigns the compilation to compliance with contributions from IT and operations. It will be a page of nouns and numbers. It will travel well. Down the hall, a door opens to the network closet. The facilities tech swaps the physical keys under the eye of a compliance officer and the camera on a tripod. No drama, only the dull work of custody done properly. The officer calls out the serial numbers as the tech reads them. The administrator types them into the log. The CEO watches just long enough to see the pattern is correct, then returns to the table and reviews the schedule for the afternoon vote ratification. She notes the quorum, confirms the dial-in details, and asks that a plain English summary be prepared for staff immediately after the vote. She steps back into the hallway and pauses at a window that overlooks the lobby. The sight below is ordinary again. A child clicks a pen cap while a parent signs a form. A courier rolls a small crate. Phones are away. She takes out her phone and drafts a thank you message to the frontline teams for holding the line while the floor settled. It is 2 sentences, specific and sincere. She schedules it to send after HR's note, so it lands second and reads like a response rather than a blast. On the way back to the lobby, she stops at the training room. A whiteboard lists modules for onboarding. She asks HR to add a brief module on change of control procedures with case studies and role play for de-escalation at the counter. Not punitive, protective. The request lands without sting because the morning made the case better than any memo could. She returns to the counter where it began. The stone is cool under her palm. She looks at the clock. 10 minutes until the top of the hour. Enough time for one more sweep. She asked the teller at window 3 whether any client mentioned delays from early chaos. One did. The teller resolved it using the script and offers to call back later to check satisfaction. Good. Keep the name and time. The teller smiles with her eyes and notes it. The hour arrives. HR's message goes out. Her thank you follows. The building receives both like 2 steady beats. The day moves forward. The bank does the quiet thing good banks do when the story outside is loud. It works. The afternoon gathers its own gravity. Calendar alerts stack into a narrow column, each one a hinge toward closure. The black CEO stands in the lobby for the vote ratification rather than hiding in a corner office. The display near the counter shows a simple grid of names. A chime, then voices. The chair calls the meeting to order, reads a single paragraph that cites the morning resolution and the authority under which it was executed, then asks for the vote. Hands rise on video. The tally posts, motion carries, no applause, only the sound of printers waking and then settling again. She thanks the board and requests 2 deliverables before close. First, a 1-page record of material actions taken since opening. Second, an internal frequently asked questions for staff that answers 5 practical questions clients will ask. Compliance claims the first, operations and PR share the second. She asks them to keep both plain and short. These are tools, not speeches. Outside, the crowd thins to a ribbon of onlookers and 2 local reporters. Officer Daniels keeps the doorway clear and the foot traffic moving. A reporter calls in a question through the glass. Was there an interruption to client access? She answers, from inside, audible but not performative. No! If a client experienced a delay, we rescheduled them to the front of the line today. Another question asks if this was a hostile action. She says it was a lawful transition executed with documentation and oversight. She points to the posted reference code and invites follow-up through PR. The answer is a bridge, not a fight. Richard Allen returns from client continuity with notes written in a square hand. He reports 3 recurring pain points from peak hours. Check-ins take too long. The kiosk freezes on screen too. Clients cannot see current wait times. None of it is dramatic and all of it is real. She thanks him and turns the list into assignments on the spot. Facilities will reposition the check-in desk for better sight lines. IT will patch the kiosk and add a visible progress bar. Operations will post a wait time display near the rope divider. She sets deadlines measured in hours, not weeks, and asks each owner to confirm back. Heads nod. The list becomes motion. The holding statement goes live on the bank site and the customer app. It reads the same in both places. Operations uninterrupted. The board confirmed leadership, direct line provided. The call center lead pings to confirm that the line is staffed and scripts match the posted note. She asks for a 10-minute sample of calls before close to check tone and content. Not to catch people, to calibrate. A courier delivers a slim box with new nameplates for the executive corridor. The facility's tech offers to install them. She declines to change the plates today. The building can learn by paperwork and behavior first. Brass can wait. He nods and stores the box. The decision travels quickly through the floor in the quiet way small, respectful acts do. Mid-afternoon brings a regulator follow-up call. They confirm they viewed the live dashboard and found it consistent with the written timeline. They request copies of 2 specific logs and the incident report. Compliance sends them before the call ends. The regulator thanks the team for real-time transparency and says a formal acknowledgement will follow. The IT head marks the request as closed and adds the reference number to the one-page record. At the counter, an elderly client arrives with a handwritten note that says, "Wire question." The CEO greets her and walks through the steps with the teller. The note is tidy and careful. The client leaves satisfied and pats the counter the way some people pat a railing that held firm in the wind. Little things matter more than statements. The room seems to know it. The one-page record arrives before 4. It lists actions by time rather than department. Receipt of resolution, notice served. Access control updated. Notary seal applied. Vote ratified. Client communications issued. Regulator acknowledgement received. It reads like a train schedule, and that is the compliment. She signs it and sends it to the board and the regulator with a brief cover line. Attached, please find a factual list of material actions taken today. PR forwards a short list of media inquiries. She authorizes a single on-camera statement at the sidewalk, at close, 2 sentences, and no questions. She will say operations were uninterrupted and that clients came first. She will thank staff for their focus and refer further questions to PR. Officer Daniels plans the path from the door to the mark and back again. It is 10 steps. He walks them twice, then stands easy. Richard asks if his interim role continues tomorrow. She answers yes and clarifies the scope. Sit with the clients who escalated today. Finish the one page on lobby friction with concrete fixes. Join the morning huddle for a week. He agrees. He thanks her for not ending the day with a ceremony. Work is the ceremony. She smiles with her eyes. Exactly. As the sun angles across the glass, she performs one last slow circuit. Tellers close out drawers with a double count. IT archives the video blocks tagged for retention. Compliance locks the tripods and signs the chain of custody form. HR prepares tomorrow's short training module on day escalation and change of control procedures. The administrator posts the final memo of the day on the internal board and timestamps it. At 5, she steps outside with Officer Daniels at her shoulder while the lobby continues to operate behind her. Cameras lift. She speaks the 2 sentences as planned and returns inside. The doors close. The bank breathes out. She places the leather case on the counter and opens it long enough to check that the resolution, the logs, and the one-page record sit in the order she wants. She clicks the latch and sets the case down beside the new badge. Clients first, she says one more time, and the room answers by doing exactly that. Evening draws a straight line through the windows and the building settles into the quieter register of last appointments and end-of-day balancing. The Black CEO chooses not to retreat. She stations herself at a side desk within sight of the lobby and treats the remaining hours like a stress test with witnesses. The operations lead brings a paired checklist. She asks for proof, not promises. Screenshots of reconciliations, timestamps on every access change, confirmation that the armored car completed the revised handoff with the correct code phrase. Each item receives a yes only when the evidence lands. She calls the Treasury for a liquidity snapshot. The numbers are ordinary, and ordinary is the victory. She asks about any outsized withdrawals tied to rumor. None, the voice says, and then adds that 2 longtime clients phoned in to express support. She asks that those calls be logged with brief notes, not for display, for history. Moments like this become legend or lesson depending on how they are kept. Human Resources rolls a slim cart to the lobby. Inside are bottled water, granola bars, and a stack of hand cards that thank staff for staying present under pressure. 2 lines, a signature, No slogans. She signs the first one and hands it to the teller at window 3 with a quiet thank you that names the specific task resolved earlier. Naming specifics turns applause into pay. The teller tucks the card into the drawer beside her keys and smiles without breaking rhythm. Compliance returns with the chain of custody form for the video archive and the log of documents sealed by the notary. She reads the chain aloud, asks one clarifying question about the time a camera switched from continuous to motion detection, and has the IT head annotate the reason in the margin. He does. The note is dry and precise. They both prefer it that way. The form returns to the envelope returns to the lockbox seals with a twist that clicks in the wrist. Richard Allen approaches with the one-page lobby friction summary she requested. He stands square to the desk and reports without embroidery. He cites 3 changes that can be done by morning, 2 that will take a week, and 1 that requires vendor input. She assigns the morning items immediately, schedules a 5-minute stand-up at opening to confirm completion, and tells him to own the vendor conversation. He nods, surprised at how natural it feels to be handed work instead of silence. He asks if he should write to clients he mishandled in previous weeks. Yes, she says, but not tonight. Draft the notes, send them after morning review, copy the service manager, and add a phone number that rings to a human. Public Relations confirms the sidewalk clip has aired on 2 local outlets. The tone is even. Social mentions are steady but not spiking. She instructs PR to answer with the holding statement and to resist any urge to feed color. Color is where spin hides. The spokesperson agrees and sends a short internal reminder: do not narrate the day, serve the day. In the back office, facilities test the executive corridor's new access cards in the presence of a compliance officer. Each door answers with a brief green blink. Serial numbers are read out and logged. When they finish, the facilities tech asks if the brass nameplates should be swapped before close. Leave them, she says again. The building learns by actions first. She drafts a late note to the board with 3 parts: what stabilized, what remains open, what will be delivered by 10 tomorrow. It fits on half a page because it has to. She attaches the 1-page record, the regulator acknowledgement, and the updated access log. She adds a final line that everything cited is preserved in the archive with reference codes. The chair replies with a brief thanks and a confirmation of the morning's consent agenda to ratify lingering items. No adjectives on either side. The trust sits in nouns and times. The call center lead arrives with a 10-minute clip of anonymized audio from the direct line. She listens to 3 calls. The script holds. Agents sound steady. One agent improvises a helpful sentence about appointment priority that fits the bank's tone. She asks PR and HR to add that line to the script and to credit the agent by name in tomorrow's internal note. People fight for scripts they helped write. Near closing, a client rushes in with a face that broadcasts bad news before he speaks. His wire cutoff is minutes away, and he fears the morning chaos cost him the window. The teller glances at her. She steps to the counter. We will make the time. She calls wire operations, states the account, confirms controls, stays on the line while the teller completes the steps, and watches the timestamp settle inside the cutoff. The client breathes out, apologizes for the worry, and leaves with a grateful shake of the hand. She returns to the desk and writes 1 sentence for tomorrow's stand-up. Prove again that urgent does not mean sloppy. Lights tick off in tears as departments finish their counts. IT marks the surveillance block save for retention and writes the final hash values on the log. Compliance signs the day's last form and pockets the pen with the satisfaction of work done cleanly. Officer Daniels radios the all clear and checks the sidewalk 1 more time, then returns to the lobby with the quiet air of a person whose job measured the day and found it within range. She gathers the leather case, opens it, and sets the contents in final order. Resolution, incident report, vote record, 1-page actions, regulator acknowledgement, access logs, tomorrow's agenda. She closes the case and rests both hands on it for a moment, not as a gesture, just to feel the weight match the day. Then she looks up and thanks the room out loud. The words are simple and exact. The team answers by finishing counts, locking drawers, and straightening the line of pens at each window. The building prepares for tomorrow the way good buildings do, by sleeping with one eye on the ledger. Morning resets the building with a clearer light and a quieter confidence. The doors open on the dot. The black CEO arrives early and stands where clients will see her first, not to be recognized, but to anchor the day. Staff filter in with crisp greetings that sound like work starting rather than theater. She calls a 5-minute huddle in the lobby and keeps it on time. 3 points. What changed overnight? What must land by 10? What to say if asked about yesterday? Each lead repeats their line back so the floor hears the cadence twice. IT reports the kiosk patch deployed before dawn, and the progress bar shows on screen 2. Operations confirms the wait time display is live near the rope divider. Facilities have moved the check-in stand to a sightline that keeps the first cue from masking the second. She asks for proof. The IT head shows a screenshot with a timestamp. The operations lead points to the display already pulsing with short estimates. Facilities hold up a quick diagram of the new flow taped under the counter for tellers to reference. Proof accepted. Next item. She turns to Richard Allen and asks for the status of the vendor call. He has a scheduled slot at 9:15 and a fallback number if the rep misses. She nods and tells him to keep the service manager looped in on every email. He understands and does not bristle at the instruction. His notes from yesterday sit in a neat stack, corners aligned. He asks permission to stay visible on the floor while the fixes go live. Granted. He takes a position beside the kiosk with a clipboard and the new script, answering questions and logging friction points as they appear. Compliance arrives with a trim training module for de-escalation and change of control procedures. HR has printed one-page handouts and set a calendar invite for a 15-minute rotation every hour so no position sits empty. She watches the first micro session in the side room with the glass wall. A teller plays the client who raises his voice. A lead plays the manager who gets stuck in instinct. The facilitator grounds the scene with 3 beats. Name the policy, name the record, name the path to resolution. The group runs it twice until the lines sound like muscle memory rather than performance. She thanks them and asks the facilitator to collect 2 examples from the floor by the end of day to fold into the module. At 9, the first wave of clients settles into a manageable flow. The new wait time board trims the fidget at the rope divider. A client glances up, sees 4 minutes, relaxes his shoulders, and stays. The kiosk no longer freezes on the second screen. People notice only because they do not notice a stall. That is the goal. She watches for 5 minutes, then moves on. The building's sound shifts from nerves to routine. Stamps, polite exchanges, the low hiss of climate control, keys pressed with purpose instead of force. A regulator liaison appears in the lobby with a briefcase and a straightforward face. He asks for 10 minutes to review the live dashboard and the incident record. She invites him to the counter where everything began rather than upstairs. He reads, asks 2 questions about timing, and requests a copy of the audit trail for the access change. IT prints a redacted version with reference codes. He takes it, nods, and thanks the team for making the audit path dull. Dull is what the system promises, he says, and leaves, walking like a man who filed something clean. PR moves through with a short list of inbound requests. She keeps the line tight. 1 radio interview by phone at lunch, live to tape, 30 seconds, no spin. She drafts the answer and emails legal. We serve clients without interruption. The board confirmed leadership. Anyone with questions can call the direct line. She records it once, calm and even, and returns to the floor. Richard flags a pattern at the kiosk. Clients confuse 2 buttons that sit too close. He sketches a quick fix box with a marker and tape, then calls IT to push a spacing tweak. The head of IT accepts the note and commits to a noon micro update. She walks over, inspects the temporary tape box, and approves it as a morning bridge. He looks relieved, then focused, and resumes logging. A courier brings a sealed envelope with the regulator's formal acknowledgement of yesterday's transparency. Compliance scans it, stamps the entry, and posts a copy on the internal board. The staff pause to read the short paragraph and then go back to work. Recognition travels further when it is not amplified. She checks the direct line report from the call center lead. Average handle time crept up by 30 seconds with the new apology script, but satisfaction scores rose. Keep the line as written, she says. Send a thank you to the agent whose phrasing we adopted by name with a copy to their manager. People stay steady when they see their words live on past the shift. Near 10, a familiar client approaches with a guarded look that says he watched the clips last night and came to decide for himself. She greets him at the counter, listens to his concern without filling the space, and lays out the simple record: resolution, notice, handover, vote, verification, retention. He weighs it and then smiles thinly. He says the branch feels like itself again. She thanks him and asks if anything on the floor still feels off. He points to a sign that hides a second pen tray. She moves the sign 3 inches and the tray becomes obvious. He laughs at the smallness of it and leaves content. Smallness is the point. The board chair texts one line: consent agenda at 11 will close the remaining items. She forwards it to the admin with the dial-in details and returns to the counter where a teller is helping a client who struggles with a form. The teller asks if she can step in. She declines and lets the teller finish, watching the process flow as designed. When the client leaves satisfied, she compliments the teller on the exact phrase that eased the confusion and suggests adding it to the script as a sidebar. The teller beams and writes it down. By mid-morning, the floor runs on rails laid overnight, reports arrive on time, fixes land within their windows, the lobby holds steady, even when the door sensors ping in quick succession. She stands at the place where the first confrontation began and looks across the counter. It is just a counter again, but it keeps a memory now, not of a fight, but of a line crossed from noise to order. She rests a hand on the cool stone for a breath, then lifts it and moves to the next task, which is the work she prefers to do. The kind that disappears into a day that serves clients well. Midday settles over the branch with the even light of a clear afternoon. The consent agenda is scheduled for 11, and the Black CEO keeps herself in motion until it lands. She sits briefly at the side desk to review the 1 page of open items and crosses out 2 that have already moved. A service manager confirms by text that yesterday's escalations were called back before 10 with new appointments set. She asks for a quick sentiment line from each client when those appointments finish and adds a reminder to record any phrases that soothe tension without promising too much. Scripts improve 1 grain at a time. The board tile opens on the display near the counter. The chair reads the remaining clauses like mile markers: vote to affirm preservation of records, vote to accept the updated access control roster, vote to adopt the training module for frontline de-escalation as a permanent requirement for all branches. Each motion carries with the clean sound of a gavel that does not need to strike. She thanks the board and asks that the plain English summary be posted internally within 15 minutes. The administrator at her elbow sets a timer and starts the email. IT pushes the micro update to the kiosk spacing that Richard flagged earlier. A tech tests it at the unit with a small group of clients watching. The buttons sit farther apart now. Fingers land where they intend to. Richard notes the change, removes the temporary tape box, and records the timestamp. He has begun to wear the clipboard like a natural tool instead of a defense. He catches her eye across the floor and nods once, not seeking praise, just logging a win the way you log a deposit. Compliance walks the perimeter of the lobby with the regulator liaison who returned unannounced. It is not a surprise and not a problem. The liaison asks simple questions while looking at the things that matter most when a story moves faster than paperwork. How clients move, where staff stand, what signage says and does not say. The answers live in the visible world. He leaves with 2 photocopies and a quiet compliment that he rarely sees a floor return to routine this quickly without a performative layer on top. Human Resources runs the rotation for the 15-minute micro session at the top of the hour. The facilitator collects 2 examples from the floor as she was asked. One where a client bristled at a policy and softened after a clear naming of the record. Another where a staffer almost reflexed to authority language and then shifted to path language that puts the solution within reach. The examples go into the module before lunch. Training that updates on the day it is taught does not feel like a poster, it feels like a tool. Public Relations routes a request from a major business outlet. They want a longer quote that frames yesterday as a turnaround story. The CEO declines the framing and offers a factual statement instead. Operations were uninterrupted. Governance worked as designed. We served clients and preserved the record. If they want more color, they can visit the lobby and watch people open accounts, send wires, and ask ordinary questions. The outlet chooses to run the short statement. A plain sentence performs better when the floor behind it is solid. A courier arrives with a small tube containing the certified copy of the vote ratification. The notary checks identification again, records the seal number, and presses the ring into the page. The ring seats with a restrained firmness that satisfies everyone who cares about chain of custody. The administrator scans the page, stores the copy set, and posts the internal summary the board promised. Staff skim, nod, and return to their stations. Ceremonies that keep the ledgers straight are the only ceremonies that matter. She walks the corridor to the network closet to watch the last physical step of the handover finish. The compliance officer reads out serials as the facilities tech secures a small metal box inside the rack with numbered seals. IT logs the seal numbers in the access system and prints the entry for the day's folder. She signs as witness and returns to the lobby. The route from server to service now passes through a new door, but the client experience has not changed by even a breath, which is the goal. Richard brings a single sheet of notes from conversations at the kiosk. 2 suggestions are modest and fast. Replace a laminated sign that reflects glare at certain hours. Add a small cradle for phones on the counter where clients need both hands. She approves both. Facilities pulls a mat replacement from a cabinet and mounts it. A teller lends a plastic phone cradle from the back until a proper one arrives. Clients begin using it within a minute without being told. The right fix is the one that needs no announcement. A call from Treasury flags, a rumor bouncing around a group chat about frozen accounts. She asks when it appeared and who saw it. PR tracks the rumor to a misread screenshot, crafts a correction that uses clear language, and responds in the same channels without naming the original poster. No scolding, no victory lap, just the record. She asked the call center whether any clients mentioned it. 2 did. Both accepted the correction when agents walked them through the actual status. She logs the pattern for tomorrow's huddle. Rumor chases vacuum, keep the record visible. Lunch hours draw their usual arc. The wait time board keeps the rope line calm. A client in a hurry glances at the estimate and decides to stay because expectation is now a known quantity. She takes that as a silent approval of the morning's changes and moves on. In the side room, HR films a quick internal clip of the facilitator demonstrating the 3-beat script with the teller. Name the policy, name the record, name the path. The video will go to branches that did not live the scene but can learn from it without seeing a headline. Near one, the regulator sends a formal note thanking the branch for live access and confirming that no further action is required at this time. Compliance posts it on the internal board beside yesterday's acknowledgement. The pair reads like bookends around a 24-hour shelf. The staff walk past, look once, then carry on, more interested in the line at window 2 than the wording of a letter. That suits her. She pauses at the counter where the confrontation began and looks at the stone. It is cool under her fingers and marked only by the faint scuff of paper corners. The memory of yesterday is still in the building, but it has been filed in the right cabinet, not as spectacle, as procedure. She tells the floor manager she will spend the next half hour in the call center listening to a random sample of calls and then return for a quick sweep before the afternoon rush. The floor manager nods and asks if the phrase "we work and clients first" should stay on the huddle board. Keep it, she says. Let the room remember the day by doing it again. The call center sits behind a glass wall with a hum that sounds like ordered thought. Headsets blink. Screens show cues that rise and fall in tidy waves. The black CEO takes a spare chair at the end of the row and listens with one ear while the call center lead pulls up a random sample. An agent greets a client who saw last night's clip and wants reassurance that routine still means routine. The agent follows the script without sounding scripted. Name the policy, name the record. Name the path. The client's voice eases by the third sentence. The CEO writes one line in her notebook. Calm is a technique. Another call reveals a small snag. A client asks about a form that still shows the old admin name in a footer on the app. The agent handles it, but the seconds count. The CEO flags it to IT with a screenshot and a request to remove stale names from templates by end of day. The IT head replies with a quick plan. App metadata update at 3, web templates by 3:30. She thanks him and asks for proof, not just the push. He promises a before and after. She asks the lead to surface 2 examples where the apology script met resistance. They find one. A caller interrupts on the first sentence and says he wants action, not apologies. The agent recovers by dropping the second sentence and stepping to a concrete next step. Good, she says. Add that branch to the internal script. Apology is a door, not a room. Step through. On the floor, Richard Allen logs a new pattern. Clients who arrive with screenshots from third-party posts and expect the bank to endorse the text in the images. He suggests a sign at the door that states the bank's official sources in plain type. She approves a temporary printout now and a clean version by tomorrow. PR drafts the text and prints a simple sheet. Official statements appear in the app, on the website, and on notices inside the branch. If you have questions, ask any staff member or call the direct line. Officer Daniels tapes it at eye level beside the entrance where it reads like, "Help, not warning." The consent agenda summary arrives on the internal board where people fill water bottles. Staff read it between tasks. A teller asks the service manager a question about how the training module will roll to other branches. The answer is quiet and practical. The module will ship today with 2 local examples and a short clip from the facilitator. The teller nods and returns to a client who needs a cashier's check for a school deposit. Routine restores itself by repeating true things. A message from Treasury notes a mild spike in midday transfers that match nothing ominous, just the rhythm of a day when customers watch closely. She asks Treasury to flag outliers and route any concern to her phone while she stays on the floor. They agree and send a first pass report with 3 items, all easily explained. She circles each explanation and writes a check mark. Clear is a form of fuel. The IT head sends proof of template fixes. Screenshots arrive in a row: old footer, new footer, cache cleared, client view verified. She forwards the images to the call center and posts one in the staff channel with a line that credits the agent who spotted the snag. The agent replies with a surprise thanks. The team reacts with the small morale lift that happens when a note lands with a name spelled right. Near 2, a client walks in with a problem that has lived for weeks in a loop of vague updates. Richard recognizes the folder. He explains the history without blur and asks permission to sit. The CEO nods and lets him lay out the steps and the missteps. He names 2 moments where the bank said it would call and did not. The client watches him, sees the lack of deflection, and breathes easier. The CEO sets a plan with a firm time and assigns ownership. When the client leaves, she tells Richard to write the sequence into a 1-pager for training, not to teach blame, to teach the path out of a loop. Compliance returns with a draft of the plain English after-action note she asked for yesterday. It is short, dated, and numbered. What occurred? What actions were taken? What was verified? What remains to be done? She trims 1 sentence and adds a link to the internal archive where the reference codes live. The note will live on a shelf that anyone can find without calling 3 people. That is how future days avoid theater. Public Relations forwards a follow-up from the outlet that ran the holding statement. They want a photo of the CEO at her desk. She declines any portrait and offers a single still of the lobby taken at a respectful distance that shows clients being served. If the story must have an image, let the image be the work. The outlet accepts. Officer Daniels coordinates a frame that clears faces or gets releases where needed. The photo shows a teller handing a receipt while a client pockets a card. The caption will mention service, not spectacle. Afternoon light advances across the stone at the counter. The branch feels like a place that knows what it is for. The wait time display trims a small surge with accuracy. The kiosk update holds. A child waits with a parent and balances a brochure on 1 finger. The brochure drops, the child giggles, the parent smiles, the teller waves. The CEO notices and writes 1 more line. Warmth is a side effect of clarity. She walks past the training room and sees the facilitator adding today's examples to the module document. The facilitator asks if she wants voiceover or captions for the clip so branches can skim. Captions, she says, and a table at the top with 3 lines you can read in an elevator. The facilitator agrees and promises a link by 4. Proof, not promise. At the side desk, the administrator lays out the late day checklist without flourish. Confirm storage of the notary sealed set, reprint the access roster, and post the new version. Capture a 10-minute audio sample from the direct line after 3. Update the internal board with tomorrow's huddle time and the theme line. She adds a small note. The theme should not be triumph. It should be continuity. We served. We will serve. A courier drops the first set of new phone cradles. Facilities installs them at the counters where people sign papers. Clients use them immediately, 2 hands free to hold IDs and checks. Richard crosses the floor with his clipboard and marks the improvement as if he were tending a garden. He passes her, says the vendor call landed, and that the longer fix for the kiosk interface will ship next week. He does not ask for a headline. He is learning to prefer proof. She stops once more at the spot where the story began and looks at the stone. It is just a counter, level and cool. The lines that once felt like a stage direction now feel like a front door. A client steps up and asks a simple question about a routing number. She answers it, thanks him for coming in, and watches him leave with the ordinary satisfaction of a task finished in minutes. The day has traveled a long way to return to this kind of minute. She writes nothing about it. She lets it stand. Late afternoon leans into the branch with a steady brightness that keeps people awake without forcing them to squint. The Black CEO reviews the late day checklist with the administrator at the side desk. Each box on the page maps to evidence. Confirm storage of the notary sealed set. Verified. The envelope sits in the lockbox with an entry number that matches the chain of custody log. Reprint the access roster and post the new version. Done. The roster shows the new admin group and a sunset date for temporary permissions. Capture a 10-minute audio sample from the direct line after 3. The call center lead drops a file on her screen with timestamps. The voices are even, the phrasing clean. She signs off each item with a short initial and moves to the next. IT pushes the final metadata sweep to remove stale names from internal forms and receipts. Screens update in small ripples across terminals. A teller calls her over to show a before and after. The old footer is gone. The new footer lists the correct role and the branch reference code. The teller smiles the way people do when small things align. She takes a screenshot and adds it to the days folder. Files that capture quiet corrections matter as much as filings that announce big steps. A client approaches with a nervous look and a folded letter from a vendor. He worries the morning's changes might delay a payment. She reads the letter and the account notes, checks the timeline, and assures him the outgoing wire left on schedule with all controls intact. She prints the confirmation, circles the time, and hands it across the counter. He folds the paper carefully, thanks her twice, and leaves with a breath he did not know he was holding until now. Relief is a form of trust. It accrues in small deposits. Richard Allen returns from the kiosk with his clipboard tucked under one arm and a small roll of tape in his pocket. He forgot to return after the morning fix. He reports that the spacing tweak held up through the lunch rush and that the phone cradles reduced fumbling at signature time. He has 2 fresh observations. A sign near window 2 still reflects glare at certain hours, and a second pen tray sits too close to the card reader at window 4. Facility swaps the sign for a matte version and slides the tray 6 inches. Richard notes the change and the time. The list gets shorter in straight lines. Human Resources and the facilitator finish the updated micro module. They show her the clip in the side room. The teller from the morning example reads the 3-beat script while a colleague plays a client who interrupts and demands a fix. The facilitator pauses, points to the pivot where the agent steps through the door of apology into action, and runs it again. Captions sync with the beats. A table at the top shows 3 lines you can read in an elevator. She approves it and asks that the branches downstream receive it before opening tomorrow with 1 paragraph of context and a link to the archive. Public Relations forwards 2 fresh inquiries. One from a trade journal asks for a process note about preserving logs during organizational shifts. She offers a short statement about retention, access trails, and time-stamped steps, free of adjectives. Another outlet asks for a color quote. She declines and repeats the plain line. The press office adds both to the internal tracker. The tracker looks like a ledger, which is the point. Compliance delivers a draft of the after-action summary she requested to live on the internal shelf. It lists the day in order, morning huddle objectives, consent agenda votes, kiosk spacing update, regulator walkthrough, template metadata sweep, direct line sample, small fixes on the floor. It reads like a list of stations a train passed through on time. She trims 1 preface and signs. The administrator stamps the page and files it. The summary will sit where new staff can find it 6 months from now without asking who to email. Officer Daniels checks in from the door with a nod. The sidewalk is calm. One reporter returns for a wide shot of the lobby that requires no sound. He stays on the public side of the glass. Clients barely glance. The officer keeps the entry clear and the line moving. She thanks him for the quiet arrangement. Security done well is a kind of service that leaves no footprint. As 3:30 slides toward 4, the lobby hits a short surge. The wait time display absorbs it, tellers flex to cover, the self-service kiosk holds steady through the wave. Richard steps to a client whose phone shows a rumor about frozen accounts. He points to the printed sign that lists official sources, walks the client through the app notice, and offers the direct line on a small card. The client nods and stays to finish a deposit. The sign earns its space. She calls Treasury for one more read on flows. The numbers remain normal, a single outlier draws attention, but the note shows a property closing that explains the spike. She marks it and moves on. The administrator at her elbow reviews tomorrow's agenda. An early huddle, a 15-minute rotation to run the micro module for the late shift, a midday check with the regulator liaison to close the loop, and a late day note to the board with any remaining open items. It fits on a page. She approves it and asks for a ladder of owners, so nothing waits for her presence to move. A client steps up with a question about a cashier's check for tuition. The teller handles it smoothly, and the client leaves with a receipt and a calm face. The CEO thanks the teller and asks what phrase made the difference. The teller repeats it. She writes it down and asks PR to add it as a sidebar to the internal script. Good phrases are tools. Tools deserve shelves. Late light skims the stone at the counter where things once felt sharp. The edge now feels like a boundary that keeps the work inside and the noise outside. She looks at the clock and decides to perform one last sweep. Access logs printed and filed, direct line samples stored with hash values, internal board updated with tomorrow's huddle time and theme line. The theme is simple: continuity and service. We served, we will serve. She gathers the leather case, opens it just enough to check that every document sits in the order she prefers, then closes it with a click that sounds like a task done properly. She thanks the floor in a voice that carries without strain. People keep working, pens align, drawers close with soft finality. The branch does not celebrate, it prepares. The work of the day has the feeling she wants clients to recognize when they think of the bank at all. Not drama, delivery. Evening drifts toward close with a steady rhythm that sounds like competence. The black CEO reviews the last live dashboards at the side desk, scanning for dullness in all the right places. Outgoing wires clear in orderly batches. Teller drawers show balanced deltas trending to 0. The wait time display slides from minutes to brief seconds as the after-work rush thins. She initials the reconciliation sheet and asks operations to attach the time-stamped screenshot so the numbers and the picture travel together. A small snag appears and resolves before it becomes a story. A kiosk session stalls during the identity step for a client renewing a safe deposit access. The agent at the floor catches it, walks the client to window 2, and completes the verification on the terminal. IT shadows the session, captures the error string, and patches the rule that misread an edge case. Proof arrives 3 minutes later. Before and after screens. Log entry with the error code and the fix. She files it into the days folder with a short title anyone can search. Richard Allen returns from the rope line with 2 fresh notes. A laminated notice near the entrance reads like a warning when it should read like help. He suggests replacing one line so it points to sources and people instead of restrictions. She asks PR to rewrite it on the spot. The second note is about the placement of a waste bin that blocks the view of a secondary queue during peak flow. Facility slides at 1 meter and the aisle opens. Richard marks both changes and the time, then steps to the kiosk to guide a client who prefers a human voice. He no longer looks like a man waiting for a verdict. He looks like a man with a list and a pencil. Compliance delivers the signed version of the after-action summary and places a copy on the internal board beside the regulator acknowledgments. The 3 pages together tell a plain story in dates and steps. A teller pauses, reads the headers, and smiles because the paragraphs match the floor she worked. She returns to her station with a small lift that no poster could have delivered. Human Resources rolls through with the last rotation of the micromodule. The facilitator runs the 3-beat script in a tone that will not wear out with repetition. Name the policy, name the record, name the path. A new hire speaks the lines, stumbles once, tries again, and lands it. The facilitator marks the progress and promises a clip overnight for branches that will start the program tomorrow. The CEO thanks them and asks the new hire to shadow the service manager for the first hour in the morning. Early muscle memory beats late fixes. Treasury calls with a final snapshot. Liquidity stands normal, with one large closing scheduled at opening tomorrow. She asks for the detail to be pinned to the morning huddle sheet so the floor expects it. No surprises. The Treasury lead agrees and emails a 2-line note that a person can read on a phone without pinching the screen. She forwards it to the administrator for the huddle board. Public Relations forwards a quiet note from a columnist who declined to add color after visiting the lobby. The line reads, "The branch looks like a bank doing its job." She files it under context, not promotion. The team does not need a headline to know what they did. They need tomorrow to look like today. Officer Daniels sweeps the sidewalk and returns with an even report. Foot traffic is steady. One photographer sets for a long lens frame and then leaves with nothing to magnify. The officer thanks the staff for keeping the aisles clear and the tone even. She thanks him for the kind of security that supports rather than announces itself. In the executive corridor, facilities completes the last physical step for the day. Spare keys, inventory reconciles with the log, the numbered seals on the small metal box inside the rack remain intact. The compliance officer reads the serials into the phone so the entry records voice and digits together. IT prints the updated access roster and posts it beside the network closet. She signs as witness, initials the print, and heads back to the lobby. A client in a worn jacket steps to the counter with a question that could drag if handled poorly. He needs to move funds on a deadline tied to a small business delivery. The teller starts the workflow and glances to her. She steps in for the policy explanation, frames the path, and names the verification that protects the client rather than the bank. The distinction lands. The client nods and produces the needed record. The teller completes the steps without hurry and hands over a confirmation with the relevant code circled in pen. The client thanks them both and leaves with a posture that looks lighter by a shade. The administrator lays the closing checklist on the desk. Archive video blocks, hash the direct line sample, email the 1 page of material actions to the board with a closing timestamp. Update the internal board with the morning huddle time, the theme line, and the 2 items that need eyes at opening. She works through the list without skipping. Each item receives a yes only when the evidence sits where another person can find it without asking for her. She opens the leather case and checks the day's order. Resolution, incident report, vote, record, regulator acknowledgements, after action summary, access logs, fix list, tomorrow agenda. She adds the kiosk patch note and the new signage language, then closes the case with a quiet click that feels like a period rather than a drum beat. She turns to the room and thanks the staff by role, not title, and by the action each role carried today. Tellers who kept the line moving with calm voices. IT who shipped proof instead of promises. Compliance who filed the dull pages that make the bright ones possible. Security who kept the doors open and the path clear. The lobby responds the way a well-run floor responds. Pens align, drawers close, screens log out. The sound settles into that small hush right before the last door locks. She looks once at the counter where the morning once tried to become a spectacle and sees only stone, paper, and a service line that will begin again on the dot. She leaves the branch the way she worked it, with nothing theatrical in her hands and the record complete behind her. Tomorrow, we'll ask for proof. The building is ready to provide it. Morning returns with a finer grain, the kind that makes details stand out instead of blur. The doors open cleanly on the dot. The black CEO stands at the counter for the first 5 minutes by design, a visible promise that today will begin where yesterday ended. On the floor, in the open, with the record close at hand. The administrator brings a slim folder holding 3 things that shape the day without inflating it. Overnight system health from IT, a 2-line note from Treasury about the early property closing, and the huddle card. She calls the huddle in the lobby and keeps it tight, 3 beats. What must land by 10, what to say if asked about yesterday, what to do if a process stalls. The heads repeat their lines back so everyone hears the cadence twice. IT confirms the kiosk patch held across the night cycle and that stale names are gone from templates bank-wide. Operations confirms the late shift ran the micro module and logged 2 useful phrases that eased tension. HR confirms the module and clip shipped to peer branches before opening with a short context note. Proof in each case sits 1 tap away. A courier arrives from the regional office with a sealed pouch. It contains the certified minutes for the consent agenda and a short directive to replicate 3 of yesterday's controls across the district by the end of the week. She reads, signs the acknowledgement, and asks the administrator to schedule a brief with district managers at noon. No fanfare, just a checklist and a path. The pouch goes to compliance for scanning and filing. The reference code hits the internal board within minutes. Richard Allen steps up with a morning list that looks nothing like the lists he once carried. He has a column for observation, a column for remedy, and a column for proof. He notes that glare on window 2 has disappeared with the mat sign, that the phone cradle cut signature time by half a minute on average, and that clients now approach the kiosk with fewer questions because the spacing nudge reads like intention instead of puzzle. He asks to test a small script at the door that welcomes clients and points to official sources without sounding like a caution. She approves a 2-hour pilot and asks Officer Daniels to partner so the tone reads like help. The regulator liaison drops by with a quiet follow-up, a formality about the retention window. She invites him to review the archive entry on a terminal in the lobby. He reads the entry, notes the hash values, and initials the line. He thanks the team for keeping the trail simple enough to check without stepping into a back room. He leaves with nothing to warn and nothing to praise. That is the right outcome. Public relations routes a request from a national outlet for a narrative about resilience. She declines the framing and offers a short statement that sounds like a receipt. Clients were served. Control changes were logged. Records were preserved. Training updated. If they want a picture, they can use the wide shot of the lobby where people are banking. The outlet can take it or leave it. Either way, the floor remains the point. She walks the line and asks tellers what still rubs. One mentions that the apology script is strongest when paired with a concrete next step in the same breath. Another points out that clients appreciate seeing the weight estimate refresh in real time rather than in jumps. IT suggests a lighter pulse for the board so the numbers roll smoothly. She approves the change. The board breathes like a calm clock rather than a stuttering one. At the side desk, she opens the leather case and lays out today's stack next to yesterday's. Resolution and vote record remain, but they sit under new pages now. District rollout directive, updated access roster, micro module version 2, and the noon agenda for managers. She writes a 1-sentence objective at the top of the pad. Export the quiet. The words look plain and correct. A client approaches with a stack of documents for a new business account. She could hand the file to a banker, but she takes the first 3 minutes herself. She explains the verification path in straight steps, names the record that protects the client, and points to the person who will carry the file through the afternoon. The client nods. Relieved that the process has edges he can see, she hands the file to the banker and thanks the client for choosing the branch. The moment leaves no mark on social feeds and matters more because of it. Noon approaches, and district managers appear on screen in small tiles. She keeps the call to 12 minutes. She shows the 3 controls to replicate the plain language lines that travel with them, and the proof each manager must collect. She takes 2 questions, declines 2 attempts to tell a story, and ends with a single instruction. Run the floor so a client could film it and the record would look like what we say. The managers nod because the request is measurable. The administrator brings a short stack of acknowledgments from staff who took the micro module overnight. Some added notes in the margins where the examples match their stations. She asks HR to fold 2 of those notes into version 3 with credit. People repeat what they recognize as their own insight. Ownership beats posters every time. Officer Daniels checks in from the door. The pilot greeting reads, "Well," he says. Clients slow for half a beat, read the line about official sources, and walk in clearer. He suggests a small font adjustment for older eyes. She approves and thanks him for watching tone and legibility in the same breath. He returns to the threshold where he belongs, visible enough to reassure, quiet enough to disappear into the room when nothing needs him. After lunch, a small glitch surfaces in the app for one client updating a contact address. IT captures the log, deploys a fix in 90 minutes, and posts the before and after with a single line. Resolved. She files it under routine, which is the category she wants most problems to live in. The label protects the day from turning into a plot. By mid-afternoon, the branch moves as if the morning never tried to invent a different identity for it. She walks one last circuit, asks the floor manager which small change saved the most time, and hears an answer that pleases her for its lack of drama. The phone cradle, by far. She nods and tells facilities to order enough for every counter in the district. Some victories come dressed in plastic and sit 6 inches to the right of where you used to put your hand. She returns to the counter and rests her palm on the stone long enough to feel its cool surface balance the heat of the room. The memory in the building is filed, retrievable and unexciting. She signs the noon call summary, checks the huddle board for tomorrow, and lifts her eyes to the line that frames the culture she is building. We served. We will serve. Then she steps back into the work, which is the only statement that needs to survive the day. Late light drifts across the lobby like a measured exhale. The branch moves through its late cycle with the kind of steadiness that turns minutes into instruments. The black CEO stands where she prefers to finish days now, at the counter where routine meets proof. The administrator brings the closing stack without ceremony. Afternoon reconciliation snapshots, a short note from Treasury that the property closing settled cleanly, a one-line confirmation from the regulator liaison that the retention window is locked and visible in the archive. She reads each, initials each, and sets them in the folder that will carry the day forward. She takes a quiet walk through the stations. At window 3, the teller closes a drawer and writes the final figures in a hand that says she trusts the numbers. At the kiosk, a client completes a form in one flow and smiles when the receipt prints on the first try. Richard Allen stands by the rope line with a clipboard that has grown spare. Notes shrink as fixes stick. He reports 2 minor frictions: a chair that squeaks near window 2, and a pen chain that snags a sleeve. Facilities, oils the hinge and swaps the chain. He marks the time and moves on. A floor is built on this kind of housekeeping, the kind that leaves no headline and protects every hour. Human Resources stops by with a list of names to credit in tomorrow's internal note. The agent who gave the line that tightened the apology script. The teller who found the phrase that calmed the tuition check client. The operations lead who trimmed the weight by redirecting overflow without fanfare. She approves the credits and asks that the note stay short. Recognition lands better when it fits in one glance and arrives alongside the shift schedule. Public Relations brings a final tally. The holding statement ran as written. The wide lobby shot played once on a local feed and then slipped under newer items. She nods and asks PR to archive the clip with the same reference codes as the incident record. History deserves shelves, not spotlights. The spokesperson agrees and leaves with the sense that the story concluded at the right altitude, in service, not in narrative. In the executive corridor, IT posts a brief that reads like a technical ledger: template sweep complete, kiosk spacing stable, metadata updated, stale names purged, access roster mirrored to the district. Compliance pins the brief to the internal board and slides a copy into the days folder. The documents stack into a shape that is almost invisible: time, action, verification, but it is the shape that lets a bank work without asking for trust as a favor. Before close, she calls a 5-minute floor check that sounds like a thank you disguised as a list. What we promised by 10, we landed. What we promised by noon, we recorded. What we promised by end of day, we filed. She asks for 1 lesson per station that should travel to other branches. The answers are modest and exact. Put official sources where eyes rest on the way in. Make the waitboard breathe like a calm clock. Teach apology as a door, then step through to action. She repeats each back and asks the administrator to package them for the district call tomorrow. A client in a worn ball cap approaches with a quiet question about an account freeze rumor he saw on a friend's phone. She walks him to the sign by the door, points to the sources, opens the app notice, and shows the line that says service is normal. He looks at the counter, looks at the tellers, looks at the board, and nods. He thanks her for not making him feel foolish. She thanks him for checking at the desk instead of letting a screenshot run his day. He leaves with a receipt and a small, satisfied shrug that says, "A doubt settled without friction." Officer Daniels steps in from the entry with a report that reads, "Like peace. Sidewalk is calm. Cameras captured routine. No one tried to turn the lobby into a stage." He thanks the staff for the way they steer crowds without making a show of it. She thanks him for standing where presence reassures and fades when the room does not need it. The doorway has become a barometer. Today, it read clear. She returns to the counter and opens the leather case. The order is familiar. Resolution, vote record, regulator notes, after action summary, access logs, district directive, training module, closing reconciliation, tomorrow's huddle card. She adds one more page at the top, written in her own hand, "Export the quiet." It is not a slogan, it is a measure. She closes the case and rests her palms on it for a second, not to pose, but to feel the weight settle exactly where it should. The doors near closing whisper and hold. A last client slips in, finishes a simple transaction, and thanks the teller with the kind of politeness that lands because the room has taught it all day. Screens sign out, drawers lock. The weight-board clears to a calm zero. She looks once at the stone where a finger once pointed like a verdict. It is just a counter, again, cool and level, a place where papers slide and stamps seat and clients put their hands when they sign. She walks the floor one last time and speaks to each roll with a sentence that names what they did rather than what they are called. You kept the line moving and the tone steady. You shipped fixes with proof attached. You recorded the day so it can be found. You kept the door open and the path clear. The words carry because they match the minutes behind them. The building answers the way well-run rooms answer by finishing the job without flair. Outside, evening spreads across the glass. Inside, the branch holds the same shape it had at opening. Straightforward, recorded, ready to be filmed by any passerby without fear that the picture and the record will disagree. She lifts the case, nods to the floor manager, and steps to the door. Tomorrow we'll ask for proof again. The room is already preparing its answer.